Karoline Leavitt may make news for her fiery statements as White House press secretary.
Let me just set the record straight. I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics.
That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money.
But what is she like when the cameras are off? From running for Congress to clashing with reporters, there's more to Leavitt than meets the eye. In April 2025, the New York Times alleged that Karoline Leavitt's office discriminated against reporters who used pronouns to sign off their emails. The publication claimed that when one of its reporters emailed Leavitt to ask about the looming closure of a climate research facility, the press secretary wrote back, "As a matter of policy, we do not respond to reporters with pronouns in their bios." According to the outlet, another New York Times reporter experienced similar treatment while communicating with the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. This presentation of pronouns has become synonymous with the LGBTQ community, and President Donald Trump had earlier issued several directives that showed his administration's stance on gender identity. In January 2025, Trump signed an executive order that affirmed the recognition of two sexes, male and female. That same month, Trump enacted another executive order that barred gender-affirming treatment for people under the age of 19. He further cut federal funding toward transgender healthcare. In February 2025, Trump banned transgender women and girls from taking part in women's sports, declaring,
"With this executive order, the war on women's sports is over."
Leavitt has had several briefings since she took over the podium as White House press secretary, but not all the information she presents to the media is properly fact-checked. In her debut press briefing, Leavitt justified a freeze on USAID funding by claiming,
DOGE and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza.
A fact check afterwards showed that USAID had only spent $46,000 on one donation of contraceptive pills and injectables in the Middle East within the first 3 years of Joe Biden's presidency. Globally, the organization only spent $8.2 million on the distribution of male and female condoms in 2023, and none were delivered to the Middle East. In fact, USAID's total expenditure on condoms was not close to the $50 million mark. An insider who previously worked with the Biden administration told CNN, "It's a lie. They are making shit up." In a similar manner, when the Trump administration deported Kilmar Abrego Garcia in March 2025, Leavitt said of the El Salvador native,
Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking.
Contrary to Leavitt's claims, U.S. courts determined that Garcia's deportation was wrongful, and allegations that he engaged in trafficking seemingly referenced a past brush with the police over speeding, during which no formal complaints were made. Leavitt is no stranger to heated interactions with reporters. For instance, in March 2025, she had an intense exchange with a journalist who raised concerns about the Trump administration's deportation criteria. The reporter argued that some tattoo symbols and clothes were falsely considered membership markers of the gang Tren de Aragua, while an obviously irate Leavitt disagreed. Needless to say, Leavitt has not always kept her cool during charged moments.
And shame on you and shame on the mainstream media for trying to cover for these individuals.
In a June 2024 interview with CNN, Leavitt criticized the network and its anchors ahead of the presidential debate between Trump and then President Joe Biden, which was set to air on CNN. She told host Casey Hunt, "President Trump is knowingly going into a hostile environment on this very network, on CNN, with debate moderators who have made their opinions about him very well known over the past 8 years, and their biased coverage of him." When the press secretary brought up CNN host and moderator Jake Tapper, the spat resulted in Leavitt being cut short mid-interview. Similarly, in February 2025, a couple of enthusiastic journalists were set to interview then National Security Advisor Michael Waltz and Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff. Amid the commotion on the White House grounds, Leavitt told the reporters,
Guys, let's act like adults here. They are generously offering their time to answer your questions. You don't need to scream at them like a bunch of school children.
In 2022, Leavitt ran for a New Hampshire congressional seat. The then 25-year-old lost to Democratic Congressman Chris Pappas, who was re-elected for a third term. Earlier, as the elections fast approached, an organization called End Citizens United lodged a complaint with the Federal Electoral Commission, or FEC, about Leavitt's campaign funding. According to End Citizens United, Leavitt allegedly received $24,847 in excessive funding from individuals between July 19, 2021 and August 24, 2022. Leavitt also reportedly raised an additional $129,000 in surplus funds over the legal contribution limit after winning the Republican primary. The organization's president, Tiffany Moeller, said of Leavitt, "Under no circumstance is it plausible for Leavitt to claim that $150,000 in illegal contributions is a clerical error or a simple oversight. This was a calculated move to head into the final months of the election with more money. It's corruption, plain and simple." In February 2025, it emerged that Leavitt reportedly owed up to $325,000 to her campaign donors in unreturned refunds. She had reportedly apparently kept the actual figures hidden during her initial filings with the FEC, ultimately sparking a debate about flaws in her political and campaign ethics. Leavitt was a diehard supporter during Donald Trump's 2020 re-election bid, but when he lost the election to Joe Biden, Leavitt continued to claim that Trump had won. Leavitt later told WMUR-TV, "I believe, as millions of Americans across the country do, that there were irregularities and chaos across the country in the 2020 election due to the reforms that were made under the guise of pandemic precautions."
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
In her chat with the outlet, Leavitt acknowledged that Biden was indeed the president of the United States. However, she also claimed this about Biden: his radical agenda in just 6 months has destroyed our country through an economic crisis, a border crisis, a national security crisis, and an energy crisis. As such, she presented her candidacy as an extension of Trump's agenda of putting America first. While Leavitt publicly claimed that Trump won the 2020 election, it was said that she didn't believe in his victory behind closed doors. Two insiders revealed to the Washington Post that Leavitt had told them in confidence that Biden won fairly. However, when the press secretary was questioned by the publication, she claimed not to remember having such discussions.
I was actually vacationing on a friend's boat down in the Gulf of Steve Martin.
In February 2025, the Associated Press reported that one of its journalists was barred from covering an Oval Office event after the outlet referred to the Gulf of Mexico by its original name as opposed to the Trump rebranded Gulf of America. When CNN reporter Kaitlan Collins made an inquiry about the incident during a press briefing, Leavitt answered, "Let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. Nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given."
And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America.
The Associated Press decided to take Leavitt and her colleagues, White House Chief of Staff Susan Wiles and her deputy Taylor Buttigieg, to court. In its filing, the publication accused the White House of interfering with the media's right to free speech. In April 2025, U.S. District Judge Trevor N. McFadden ruled that the White House was in the wrong and ordered the return of the Associated Press back into the Oval. However, the publication's journalists were still barred from presidential coverage during Trump's appearance at the National Republican Congressional Committee dinner. Leavitt wasn't expecting to be celebrated by White House reporters when she became the press secretary. While appearing on My View with Laura Trump, Leavitt said of her first press briefing,
"It definitely was a moment seeing just a sea of people who want to make me look bad."
It didn't take long before Leavitt developed a feud with CNN's Kaitlan Collins. The duo was off to a rough start during Leavitt's debut as press secretary, since Collins had a string of questions about Donald Trump's decision to freeze foreign aid and his Department of Justice purge. In March 2025, Collins and Leavitt went back and forth when Collins referenced one of Trump's Truth Social posts in which he alleged that pardons issued by Joe Biden were void because they had allegedly been signed using an auto pen. Leavitt expressed doubt that Biden was aware of the fact that his signature was being used on pardons, and when Collins asked if there was evidence to back up her claim, Leavitt quipped,
You're a reporter, you should find out.
In March 2025, The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, revealed that he was accidentally added to a Signal group chat with key national security personnel following an invite from National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. Goldberg claimed that he was subsequently made aware of plans of attacks on Yemen.
And this text contained operational military information, including the time that bombs were supposed to start dropping on Yemen.
Goldberg further alleged that most members of the group celebrated after the success of the strikes, which had resulted in a death toll of 53. In response to Goldberg's revelation, Leavitt shared a screenshot of the article on X and accused him of fabricating the story. She wrote, "This entire story was another hoax written by a Trump hater who is well known for his sensationalist spin." Leavitt had a preferred candidate during the 2024 presidential run, and it clearly wasn't former Vice President Kamala Harris. In August 2024, Harris sat down for her first joint interview on CNN with her running mate Tim Walz. Following the interview, Leavitt took to Jesse Watters' Primetime to take jabs at Harris, saying, "Well, I think it's pitiful that the Democrat nominee for President of the United States dodges the press for 40 days, goes into a safe space for her first big sit-down interview, can't do it alone, has to bring her male running mate with her."
When she's trying to be the first woman president of the United States, what message does that send to young women and girls across this great country?
Similarly, during a September 2024 appearance on Newsmax, Leavitt responded to Russian leader Vladimir Putin's interest in a Harris presidency by saying,
They know, and the world knows, that Kamala Harris will continue to throw the United States under the bus to appease our adversaries.
Leavitt has long expressed her disdain for traditional media and its values. As a student at St. Anselm College, Leavitt wrote an article for the St. Anselm Crier in which she called out mainstream media for sidelining Trump ahead of the 2016 election. She wrote, "Liberals themselves will never admit it, but any rational and open-minded individual can see the ever-present bias that engulfs the media day in and day out. Major news stations such as CNN, ABC, and MSNBC might as well come out and endorse Hillary Clinton. Even as White House press secretary, her preference towards non-traditional media has shown through." In April 2025, Leavitt hosted the first ever influencer briefing, welcoming online social media personalities into the White House. She proclaimed,
"The Trump White House will speak to all media outlets and personalities, not just the legacy media."
Although Leavitt has been a strong media critic, she ironically tried to pursue a career in journalism. She applied for an internship at Fox News and even founded a broadcasting club at St. Anselm College. In fact, Leavitt's first brush with politics was at a media event. She told Politico, "As a student during the 2016 election, I was granted the opportunity to work for Fox News and meet several presidential candidates. That experience was my first glimpse into the world of press, and I knew I wanted to pursue it in my career post-grad."